to break down on him at a key moment. What can he do, I wonder, this time? He'll be starting from the second row of the grid and be trying to get on the podium for the sprint race. So let's just take another look at the lineup on the grid then, and the crucial starting positions. It will be the rolling start, remember. Beginning the sprint race, it is a standing start for the feature. It's France and the United States. Lapierre, who was so impressive for France, he didn't race in Great Britain. It was Alexander Premat, but it just goes to show that France have two very, very quick drivers. But other drivers who are making their A1 debuts, if you like, David Martinez for Mexico. Watch out for him. He's qualified 11th. Thomas Enger for the Czech Republic. Johnny Reid for New Zealand. He's making his first start for his country. Further on down the list, Alex Young is doing both races today. As far as Fauzi's not feeling too well. Hideki Noda is making his first drive for Japan. Christian Jones for Australia. And of course, Thomas Scheckter for South Africa. And boy, have they been scratching their heads this weekend.
It's been a huge disappointment. I don't know whether it's a wake-up call or not, but certainly something has not clicked between team and driver.
That's right, they are going to be pretty much at the back of the grid. They went a little better in this morning's warm-up. They were inside the top 20, but even so, John, Thomas Scheckter's going to have his work cut out.
I don't know how good he's managed to get the car. Of course, this morning's warm-up, you don't necessarily have to run with your race fuel, and I would imagine that Team South Africa may well have taken that route to try and resolve the problems that they've been working through for the last 2 days, and just haven't seemed to be able to get to the bottom of. So it's inexplicable, a driver of the natural ability and speed of Thomas Scheckter to find himself starting so far down the grid and to be 23rd quickest out of 24 cars here this weekend. You know, that's tough. That's tough for a man of his stature. Also, he's got an ego.
Well, don't we all? He won't be too happy about starting back there. But let me tell you also that of some of the other front-running teams who did so well at Brands Hatch, Brazil is best placed. They do lead the points, remember, on 21 points. But their nearest rivals, Australia and New Zealand, have not qualified so well for this, because Australia in the hands of Christian Jones back in 22nd place, New Zealand back in 14th place, and they actually had a gearbox problem this morning in the warm-up, so they're not having an easy time. Next up is Mexico in the points, but they start 11th on the grid, and then it's France, who of course do start from pole position.
Well, I think France being the exception, all the newcomers have found it relatively difficult, even though we've only had one round of the 12 race series. Nevertheless, coming in 2 races behind the bulk of the field, but it gives you an indication of the quality of Team France and their driver lineup, that whether it's Alexander Premat or Nicolas Lapierre, they've got consistency. And what was most impressive about Lapierre was that in 3 of the 4 qualifying sessions, his lap times were within a tenth of a second, and that's really why he was able to consolidate that front row, that pole grid position.
Look at the overalls on the American team. Fantastic. You're not going to miss them, are you?
I wish we could see more of it. That's what showbiz is all about. That's what motor racing's got to think about. It's not got to think about just the pure mechanics or the pure technology. They've got to think this is a show, and what we've got here, and we're going to see over the remaining, well, we're going to see 11 after today. With today, we are putting on a show.
Yep, Rick Weidinger is the team owner at the Team USA, and he's certainly pushing the boat out when it comes to the drama. Dick Bennett's taking a little look down the grid. Interestingly, he looks after the engineering side for the New Zealand team, but there is the British entry, Robbie Kerr. I wonder what he can do. He's won here at the Euro Speedway in the past, but not in an A1 Grand Prix car.
It's going to be a difficult race. Robbie did a good job in qualifying, though he was fractionally behind the pace of the top 3. So he's got a little bit of work to do. This rolling start will be interesting. Turn 1 here at the Euro Speedway is a different turn to that we saw at Brands Hatch with Paddock Hill Bend. It was probably an easier corner Paddock Hill Bend in many respects, because there's a much quicker corner, so there's not this switch from hard acceleration up to turn 1 as we're going to see here, then on the brakes, and that effect, that motorway effect, where the concertina of the cars at the back are later on the brakes, and therefore you have that sort of, well, we're familiar with what happens on motorways when people get it wrong.
So we are now preparing for the green flag lap, the formation lap that will bring them back around and then to a rolling start for the beginning of the sprint race. The pace car is all set to set them away, and we're looking for the start of the formation lap. Away go the cars. then 24 nations competing here in Germany this weekend. We're one nation short, the Russian entry deciding to go through a driver evaluation program before the next round in the series at Estoril in Portugal. But 24 nations are represented in identical cars, and the colours of the countries proudly displayed as they set off around this 2.8-mile track.
So through turn 1, immediately you go into turn 2, but then you're on the brakes, down the gearbox to third gear for turn 3, and then turns 4 and 5 come up very quickly. Short gap between them. An area of racetrack where it will be easy to trip over a car ahead of you, particularly in the opening lap. But exit onto the straight, turn 5, very, very bumpy in the inside. Lots of drivers realizing that if they stay slightly outside the apex, it's a much smoother transition from the road course back onto the speedway, the back straight of the speedway.
Well, they head down into this other twiddly section. You just saw Ralph Furman coming through there, driver for Team Ireland this weekend. He's another new driver into the championship. Michael Devaney did an excellent job for Team Ireland at Brands Hatch, but Ralph Furman's a former Grand Prix driver. He's a former F3 champion, Formula Nippon champion in Japan. Truly experienced, truly able. And I'm going to be very interested to see how far he can move up the order.
And part of his problems, apart from the mechanical ones we just talked about, during the qualifying, the team realized that some of the speed that he was lacking was because his foot on the footrest in the left of the cockpit was actually just catching the brake pedal. He left foot brakes, so the pedal's quite close to the rest, and it was actually dragging the brakes fractionally all the way around the lap, but particularly on these long straights, both internally and on the external super speedway loop.
Simon Hill driving the pace car, just slowing it down a little bit because one or two of the drivers at the back have sort of been left behind a touch. They want to get them all nicely closed up as we approach the last twiddly section of this infield. And at the moment they are still quite spread apart, so let's hope that they can tighten up the order as they come through the last sequence. Now, they've got a tight right followed by a tight left here, and we're riding on board the German car from 5th position, so you'll get a little chance to look at this, and then they'll come back up onto the oval and through the final turn of the oval, turn 14 of this whole course.
Yes, it's this sequence of turns 12 and 13, and we're just seeing cars coming through that little kink before they go into the turns 12 and 13. Here really is the key, I think, to a lot of the overtaking opportunities, and certainly it was the key to me to getting a successful lap, because turn 13 is a crucial corner leading on to the fastest part of the racetrack, and if you had got a good drive, no wheel spin, remember, no traction control on these cars, then you could get good top speed, but the field now bunched up, ready to take the start of an 18-lap sprint race.
Here we go, all set for the start of the third race of A1 Grand Prix. The second event in Germany gets underway, and France and the United States go together. They're absolutely side by side heading down into the first curve. And Great Britain getting in there. Oh, Great Britain and United States tangled. Ireland in trouble as well. And it's France that has the lead. Switzerland has come up to second. Brazil is in third.
And Jos Verstappen also on the grass. He got involved, so we've got 4 cars altogether. Scott Speed, that front row good position, challenged for the lead going to turn 1, but the collision occurred. Robbie Kerr and Scott Speed, Team USA and Team GBR were the cars that collided. Scott Speed went up in the air. Team Ireland had to go way out onto the grass as well. There's Team GBR and Robbie Kerr making their way back very slowly indeed.
He's got a bent front suspension there, John. Definitely the front wheel at a very strange angle. But look at the battles going on. Portugal there having a good dice with Canada, but this is all allowing France, Nicolas Lapierre, to open up a very useful lead. Switzerland, Neil Yarni up to second. And look at New Zealand. New Zealand's come up from nowhere, and Pakistan's in trouble.
Adam Khan, I think, was one of the team that got clipped in that first turn incident, but there's principally his bodywork. It might be the back end of the front wing. Jos Verstappen got a right. There's a rear suspension, left rear suspension arm has been damaged in that collision. Again, looking at the smoke pouring off. Adam Khan, Team Pakistan, locks up, coming down into, that is turn 10. Scott Speed out of his car makes his way back to the pits.
What a disappointment for America. But look, Pakistan definitely got problems with their car. Adam Khan is now slowing up a bunch of cars, including Canada and Italy, the blue colours of Italy right behind, but are coming across the line to complete the first lap. France has a big lead over Switzerland and Brazil. New Zealand up to 4th. That's remarkable from where he started. And the smoke pours off the Pakistan car, and Canada's going for the move. So does Italy, and there's nothing Adam Khan can do about it.
I think Adam Khan will find himself going into the pits fairly shortly. because whatever the smoke is, it's probably the tyre and the bodywork contact. Either it'll wear the bodywork away or it'll wear its way through the tyre. In the meantime, that first corner shunt has opened up a huge gap between the first 5, as we see now yellow flags still being waved to get those cars clear.
I tell you what, John, the other big mover is Malaysia. Malaysia started 18th on the grid and it's up to 5th. Oh, look at Pakistan. Adam Khan going straight on.
Yes, I mean, he's trying so hard. He's got so much on his mind. And I mean, frankly, he had to come into the pits at some time. He locked up, and Jos Verstappen still hobbles his way back. He's only made it round to turn 9. And he's still got almost half the circuit to go to before he can get back to the pit lane. Timo Scheider, yes, Timo Scheider for Germany passes in the inside. Alex Young, Team Malaysia, that's a pass for position. So now Germany is place 5, Malaysia place 6.
So Germany up into 5th. That's where they started from, but they obviously got tangled up in this run to the first corner. Now, John, let's see if we can analyse what happened.
Well, I think it's Team GBR is going to be not the cause, but a big part of this action. Scott Speed pulls over to the right. Robbie Kerr sticks the nose inside, and again right front, left rear, then bodywork all over the place. 4 wide. There's Scott Speed. Now on the outside you see Jos Verstappen. That's the bright orange car for Team Netherlands. He also gets involved alongside Timo Scheider, and he gets and suddenly look, Team New Zealand runs, makes a clean run down the outside. Nose bodywork. 3 cars there. And Pakistan. You saw Adam Khan, again, one of those 3 cars. The bright yellow helmet in the middle of that pack, moving from right to left. That is Ralph Fairman in the Team Ireland. Somehow or other, because of the incident, he had no choice. Timo Scheider also got collided with Thomas Enger of Czech Republic.
Yes, you just saw the German car, well, we just glimpsed the German car leaping into the air for a fraction of a second. But I think the Pakistan car is heading towards the pit. Surely, look, the damage to the front there.
Yes, the front, the wing on the right-hand side is rubbing against the tyres. Well, poor Jos Verstappen driving almost 3 wheels on my wagon. Ralph Fairman and Team Ireland trying to make a pass on Team India down into turn 6. He gets it done, and he kicks up, well, you know, hugely disappointed with the fact that what was going to be a good run down the outside spoiled by the incident in turn 1.
So that means that Ireland are now up into 13th place after those initial problems at the first corner. But this race being led comfortably by France from Switzerland and Brazil. New Zealand in 4th place after that amazing run around the outside into clear air. Germany 5th, Malaysia 6th, Canada 7th ahead of Italy. Now look back to what's been happening to Adam Khan for Pakistan. A lot of there was the damage as well.
Yeah, part of the bodywork, and that gets clipped by another car as Adam Khan basically slows down on the main straight. You can still see bits of the bodywork blowing around, drivers pulling over to one side or the other to avoid, because those body panels are made of carbon fibre, and when they are damaged they fall and break into shards which are extremely sharp, and the last thing you want to do is drive over one, because that will cut a tyre as quick as anything.
Malaysia now under pressure from Canada, but Alex Young driving for Malaysia in a good solid 6th place at the moment. Further back, other drivers trying to move up and still hitting the debris there on the circuit. The safety car is on standby, but I don't know whether they're going to deploy it as yet. Running towards the back of the field, you could see the Lebanese car and also the Australian car. They're running in 16th and 17th positions at the moment.
But one big beneficiary of what's taken place is Team South Africa. Thomas Schechter has got through all that damage, all that carnage in turn 1, made his way into 11th place. He's hounding down Hideki Noda in Team Japan to be in the top 10.
Well, you could see in the background there, New Zealand almost running a bit too wide as Germany catches, and Timo Scheider is flying for Germany, and he's putting the black car of New Zealand under some serious pressure. But the safety car has just been called. I gather the safety car will be coming out on circuit, so of course they'll all be able to race to the line, but then they'll all have to stack up behind the safety car.
So on board with Team Germany looking forward. This is coming out of turn 10 now, the sweep, the flat-out sweep through 11, then hard on the brakes into 12, and you've got to keep the car tight. You've really got to hug the curb all the way around. Look at Timo Scheider, he's got half the car over the curb. Now you've got to straighten the car out to get that good run out of 13. There's the safety car, and that will shortly be waiting to see just which part of the track it's coming on at. We can't quite get a clear view of it.
Well, I think they'll pick them up fairly quickly as they go down through that first section. A rather the glum and dispirited Scott Speed. He had a great opportunity for a decent result for Team USA, but it all went wrong with that first corner.
Yes, it did. All the hard work that he put in over those 4 qualifying sessions, and of course now, along with many others, he'll be starting at the very back of the grid. So we hope that the brio that we saw throughout qualifying and in this morning's warm-up has not been lost, with the prospect of suddenly having to work your way through a field of cars and starting maybe in the 20th, 23rd positions, which is probably where he will be. It's not a great prospect for Scott Speed. It's not getting any better. We've seen glimpses of brilliance from the American driver. We'll need to see a lot more of that in the feature race. As we go back once again, look at the start as you see the cars come down into turn 1, and it's the balance between France on the right of screen, USA moves over, and then Robbie Kerr dives in the inside, and Scott Speed just didn't know he was there.
Oh, just having a look, Pakistan, Adam Khan did make a big lunge down the inside, and I think he hit the Portuguese car, I'm not sure, but it was a big old lunge from Pakistan.
So looking from, this is back of Neil Yanni as he look
on board the German, yeah. And we reckon he got a hit here, don't we?
He did indeed. He got one wheel, certainly went up in the air. Well, don't notice it there so much on that onboard shot, but certainly there was a bit of air underneath Team Germany's car. As we go back to the safety car, the lights are out, so hopefully this race will be underway in a very short time.
Now then, will France come under pressure from Switzerland? This is a good run for Neil Yanni for Switzerland. Both these drivers have been racing against one another in the GP2 category, but now they're racing for their nations. They're racing for France, they're racing for Switzerland, with Brazil right behind them. Then New Zealand, Germany, Malaysia in 6th, Canada in 7th, Italy in 8th, Mexico 9th, Japan in 10th. They've come up well from their qualifying position. South Africa, Ireland, India, Austria, China, Lebanon and Australia. Those are the cars on the track. In fact, the Czech Republic's managed to join back up to the rear of the field. So has Indonesia, and we're getting all set to go racing again.
So the control of this race is in the hands of Team France, Nicolas Lapierre. He can get on it as any time he likes, but he has done so. Neil Yanni, Team Switzerland directly behind. Nelson Piquet Jr. for Brazil. The top 3 with New Zealand, Germany, Malaysia rounding out the top 6.
Green flag waves then, and Nicolas Lapierre has made an excellent restart. But watch Germany. We're on board with Germany attacking New Zealand, going for it down into turn 1, but he decides not to.
Well, I think that's sensible, because he didn't get alongside, and to try and take a lunge and hope that Team New Zealand would see you, it would certainly spell another incident. It looks at the minute that Bruno Scheider, or Tim Scheider in Team Germany has certainly got the speed that New Zealand quite doesn't have. They come onto this back straight, not a particularly long straight, not long enough to get a good enough draft to drag up alongside. He may look and show his nose, but decides again just to wait, takes another view on the outside, just trying really to distract Johnny Reid and Team New Zealand.
Yeah, Johnny Reid, his first race for New Zealand. It was Matt Halliday, remember, who drove for New Zealand at the last race at Brands Hatch. A move there from Ananda Mikkola for Indonesia. He's been going really well here this weekend, but I think he got really caught out in that first corner shenanigans, and unfortunately, therefore, dropped to the rear of this field. Malaysia come through, Canada, Italy in blue. Mexico doing a pretty good job. David Martinez, first outing for Mexico, and he's currently running in 9th.
Back on board with Timo Scheider, Team Germany, looking at the back of Johnny Reid, Team New Zealand again. He's not attempting an overtaking maneuver. I think what he's doing is simply trying to distract the New Zealand driver to make him look in his mirrors instead of looking forward. That's really a tactic, that's just an experience. But Johnny Reid so far resists all the pressure that's coming from Timo Scheider in the Team Germany car. Now this turns 13 as
Lebanon off.
Yes.
And that's Khalil Bashir, the man who survived that frightening accident. China as well. I wonder if they tangled. And Tung Yijiang for China. He's been very impressive this weekend. Let's see what happened. Lebanon down the inside, and oh dear.
Well, that was a no-hooper of all no-hoopers. He was going probably 15, 20 miles an hour quicker than we saw from Tung Yijiang as he turned into turn 10. No chance whatsoever.
So the Chinese car through the gravel, and then as he managed to get back out, he managed to sort of keep it going. There's pretty hard-packed gravel here at the Euro Speedway, and there is an opportunity to get back out. Look in the background, Malaysia and Canada are racing hard for position, but Malaysia just manages to cover it. Alex Young is an experienced racer. He's not going to leave the door open to the Canadian car, but now here's a real good chance for Sean McIntosh. Look at Italy in there as well.
Alex Young, who's got tons of experience, but clearly under pressure from young Sean McIntosh. And you're allowed to make one blocking maneuver. You're not allowed to go back across the track again. As Malaysia, Canada and Italy battling all the way. This is for 6th position.
Oh, right out over the curb, there they go, and Alex Young using every inch of space. Sean McIntosh for Canada on the attack, with Italy right behind them, and also this is allowing Mexico to close up, making it a 4-way race for 6th position. And behind Mexico, it's Japan. Very experienced driver Hideki Noda could join on. We're right on board here. Look at this from Malaysia's car, looking back at the Canadian entry of Sean McIntosh.
So Sean McIntosh has got to get his car as close as possible to pick up the draft. You've got big wings in these cars, you've got big rear tires. It causes a great big vacuum behind the car you're following to allow you to be drawn up to the back, and maybe if you get an opportunity, slide alongside. Sean McIntosh looks for the chance, but wasn't close enough that time.
Sean McIntosh impressing many people. He's a youngster. He's been racing in Formula Renault in the UK. He's taken a big step up here to race an A1 Grand Prix car, but he's learning every time that he goes out, and he's impressing his team bosses. Good race car developing for 2nd as well. Switzerland still 2nd, Brazil 3rd, New Zealand 4th. Germany can't find a way past. As yet, they're still 5th. 6th, Malaysia, all yellow and white. Then Canada behind, the blue of Italy. And then they're chased by the red, white and green of Mexico. Japan in 10th place. Ireland still in 11th place.
So still looking back from Team Malaysia, Alex Young, as we look into the cockpit almost of Team Canada. Come back on up to turn 9, and certainly we've seen Team Canada push very hard. Also Team Ireland now trying to find a way to increase that battle into a top 10, into a top 11.
India running in the hands of Karan Chanduk. We've seen the Czech Republic move up. Thomas Enger, very experienced driver in both Europe and in the United States. First outing for him, though, in A1 Grand Prix. There is Timo Scheider for Germany. He does look like one of the major threats here, but over the last lap, Johnny Reid has just managed to keep it under control. Off goes the Indian car. Karan Chanduk takes to the gravel.
Yes, that's down at turn 11, I think.
This is how he did it, John. A little bit too late on the brakes.
Yes, if you dive down the inside, it's an acute turn. You've got to get the speed off. If you don't, you're just going to run across the corner onto the gravel. And that's where we saw that other, well, Team Malaysia made a blinding dive down the inside. No chance of making the corner. And, of course, had contact with Team China.
That's brought the Czech Republic into 13th place, that little spin. But France leads this race by 2.1 seconds from Switzerland. Brazil very close behind. Then it's New Zealand running in 4th and Germany in 5th place. 6th place still for Malaysia, but look at them all ganging up on Alex Young. We're riding on board the Malaysian car, holding on to 6th place at the moment, but it is a great race. Canada behind, and right behind them it's Italy, Mexico and Ireland.
So Sean McIntosh really looking to, he's moving around the racetrack trying to find the piece of track that will give him the run off the corner to put in position to into turn 9 as an example. But going into turn 9 isn't an easy overtaking place. Down into turn 10, if you get it right, is slightly easier, but if you misjudge it, well, we've seen 2 big misjudgments into turn 10. If you get it wrong, you go straight across the track into this gravel trap. A
little lock up for Canada. Just to advise you, the race director Ian Watson has said that the USA, Great Britain and Netherlands teams will all be under investigation as a result of that first corner accident.
Yes, I think the Netherlands were probably very much a passenger in that, but nevertheless they have to be brought in, have to give their explanations, and race director will then decide if there's fault or blame, and if there is, the consequence will be in his hands.
Remember, how they finish this sprint race is crucial because it's how they line up for the feature race, the longer race with a pit stop later on this afternoon. And still Malaysia managing to fend off Canada. It's a good race between these two currently, but France are the ones who have the edge here because they've got a lead of just under 2 seconds from Switzerland. Brazil, Nelson Piquet Jr. showing great pace again, but as yet he hasn't been able to find a way past that Swiss car. New Zealand in 4th, Germany 5th, and then it's Malaysia, Canada, these whole bunch of cars, Italy in there, Mexico and Ireland, Japan running 11th, South Africa in the hands of Thomas Schechter running 12th ahead of his teammate from the IRL, Thomas Enger for the Czech Republic. So that's a fun situation to see them running 12th and 13th, 14th place for Austria, 15th for Indonesia, 16th for Australia, and after that trip across the gravel, India running down in 17th and China 18th. Looking down over the leaders, France have a wonderful lead at the moment over the race for second between Switzerland and Brazil.
Yes, it's Brazil, in fact, has got the fastest race lap to date. That was set in lap 8, 1:34.95. So Nelson Piquet Jr. doing the best he can, but he's some 2.2 seconds down in time overall in France, and running just about half a second down on Switzerland. Neil Yarny in second place. But this is the battle between Malaysia, Canada, Italy, Mexico, Ireland, Japan, and probably South Africa if we could just have a wide enough camera lens. And Alex Young now, seemingly he's got the situation in control in spite of all the efforts of Sean McIntosh. And a couple of 3 laps ago, he was really all over the back of the Malaysia car. Now, maybe just catching his breath, giving himself the opportunity. 7 laps to go to make one more lunge and try and take away that 6th place.
Just under 7 laps to go now in this sprint race, the first of the 2 races here in the World Cup of Motorsport from the Euro Speedway at Lausitz. And watch Nelson Piquet Jr. for Brazil. He's hounding Switzerland.
And he's closing down because once again on this, the 11th lap, we're now on lap 12, has set the fastest race lap. So he's not happy with running in 3rd place behind Neil Yarny for Team Switzerland. He's closed up, but again coming into turn 9, no opportunity to pass. Don't get too close in this corner because it's all about speed off turn 9. It's a long exit. You have to build speed up through that corner. If you get too close mid-corner, you're going to lose front end grip and therefore lose any hope of maintaining that gap.
Good result in prospect though for Switzerland here. Their best finish at the opening meeting was a 9th place in the sprint race, and they got caught up in some of the first lap accidents that were going on in the feature race, so he didn't get a result really in the feature race at Brands Hatch. Neil Yarny in the silver Team Switzerland car, but at the moment he's holding on to second and doing a fine job of fending off the advances of the Brazilian Nelson Piquet Jr. And it's France that continue lead. Now there are just 6 laps to go.
Yes, Yarny seems to have a slight advantage coming out of turn 13. That's the tight corner that leads on to this long pit straight, and it's preventing Nelson Piquet Jr., Team Brazil, from getting that run into turn 1 to get under the rear wing and then be able to pull out before you get to the braking distance to try and get alongside that. Therefore, once you hit the brakes, you're not going to find the other car, Team Switzerland in this case, coming back at you.
France enjoying an advantage here despite the intervention of the safety car in the early stages. Hasn't slowed them down at all. Nicolas Lapierre's looked composed and confident and has opened up his advantage once again. But Switzerland and Brazil are not too far behind. These 3 cars then have a useful margin of some 6 seconds or so over 3 seconds in fact over New Zealand, and the pit teams keeping an eye on what's going on. That's inside the Brazilian pit. Can their man claim second in the closing stages of this race? And that would put him into 2nd place on the grid, of course. Further back, Austria coming under pressure from Indonesia, and we've been impressed with Ananda Mikkola this weekend so far. John, do you reckon he can find a way past Matthias Lauda?
I think there's a good chance. Matthias has really been on a very steep learning curve. He had a few little moments during the practice and qualifying sessions. He's got his father here this weekend now to maybe settle him down and just allow him. As we look at Team China, they had contact earlier in the event with Malaysia when they had that bump down at turn 10, so Team China pulls into the garage to get that car now prepared for the feature race, which will be in a little over an hour from now.
The Lebanon and Chinese teams under investigation after their incident as well, interestingly enough, as Scott Speed watches the race, sitting down by the car, not where he wanted to be at all. What a disastrous start for Team USA. It didn't go well from Brands in terms of pace. They've had the pace here this weekend, no doubt about that. Fastest single lap in qualifying. He didn't put 2 together enough to beat this man, Nicolas Lapierre, to take pole position, but he did start from the front row, and it's all gone to pieces. It's Lapierre who leads for France, Yarny 2nd for Switzerland, Piquet 3rd for Brazil, and then the gap back to Johnny Reed for New Zealand and Timo Scheider for Germany.
Yes, and Timo Scheider seems to have really said, look, I've given it my best shot in the early laps. I wasn't able to get past Johnny Reed. He defended well, he drove cleverly where it was important. He didn't allow me any opportunities whatsoever. We saw Timo Scheider have a look a couple of times coming down, pit straight into turn 1, but wasn't far enough forward, so maybe he's decided that 5th is what I can do here with 5 laps remaining. And unless something happens to Team New Zealand, I think that's where they will finish, both 4th for New Zealand and 5th for Germany.
The points count the same in this race as they do in the feature race. China being pushed back out, in fact, so they will maybe get a finish in here because of looking to get a decent grid position for the second race. It's worth going back out and finishing the laps, as many as possible. But remember, there are still 10 points on offer to the winner of this race. That's exactly the same number of points on offer to the winner of the feature race. It goes on down the list, 9 points to second, 8 points to third. So when you get to the closing stages, perhaps people won't take too many risks here. They want a decent grid position for the feature race, and they want to score some useful points.
On board with Thomas Enge and the Czech Republic team, and he's putting pressure on Hideki Noda for Team Japan. So slightly better approach out of turn 13 for Czech Republic, but again, really, because Japan is on the throttle a bit sooner, that's what causes that. In a sense, it's a slightly artificial gap that opens up, because at the end of the straight, the Czech Republic will lift off slightly later, and the gap will return to the level it's been pretty much for the last few laps.
Interestingly though, Thomas Enge was able to get past the South African car of Thomas Schechter, because he's now up into that 12th place. So Enge has been one of the most impressive in terms of getting past people, but of course he was not involved in, but he got slowed right down, didn't he, by that first corner accident.
Yeah, the consequences of that accident went all the way down through the field. It just didn't involve those that were immediately involved with Team GBR and of course Team USA.
New fastest lap again for Brazil. In fact, France had reclaimed fastest lap briefly, but now Nelson Piquet's got it back. There is a point on offer to the fastest lap, but it's between the two races. So whoever gets fastest lap in either sprint or feature, whichever is the fastest of the day, they get the extra point. So it's still worth going for. Brazil, though, in third place, not able yet to find a way past Switzerland.
There's Thomas Enge right on the tail of Hideki Noda, Team Japan. The gap actually looks larger there from the track camera than it does at the onboard camera. So again, into turn 10, this is the corner we've seen a lot of the action. It's a slow corner, you've got to get the speed off, then you pick up the throttle very quickly and drive the car through 11, and then it's back onto the brakes for this very tight sequence of turn 12, and then finally 13 that leads on to the beginning of the big bank turn 14 onto Main Straight.
That's where the big slick tyres are working hard. You can see Thomas Enge having to flick on the opposite lock out of that corner. The minimum speed through there is down to right. It's a very low pace, around 45 miles an hour or so. And that shows you how much the traction is important out of that corner.
Of course, they've got the opportunity to use the power boost button, and looking down, we've seen that both Malaysia and Canada, not surprisingly, have used the maximum number of applications. That's 4 in the sprint race. That'll be allowed 8 when it comes down to the feature race. And France has used it 3 times, Switzerland twice, Brazil 3 times, strangely New Zealand and Germany only once apiece.
Robbie Kerr on the left-hand side there, and Adam Khan on the right, still with his helmet on, interestingly enough. Poor Robbie, well, he went for the move, didn't he, into the first corner. I'm sure it will be debated. It's going to be analysed as well by the race director and by the stewards, so we'll get a bigger picture on that later on. But we're into the closing stages of this first race, under 3 laps to go now, and still Malaysia managing to fend off the likes of Canada, Italy, Mexico and Ireland.
But interestingly, Italy, Mexico and Ireland have yet to make use of the power boost button, so they maybe are going to save it for, well, we're on 3 laps to go. They're going to use it, they better start using it pretty quickly, because there's no point when the race is over.
Well, France has just given a little extra push on the power boost. That's interesting, isn't it? Because he's on his own, he's up in front. I guess he might as well use it, but we've just seen the indicator come up on our screen that he used the push to pass, and maybe going for that fastest lap now.
Very important to get a point, whether it's in this race or in the feature race, and more likely it ought to come in this race. It's the shorter of the two. The feature race, of course, is 36 laps. You have to decide whether you want to change that mandatory set of wheels and tyres either midway or after 2 laps or 1 lap before the end. But because this race is 18 laps, I suspect the quickest lap for the 2 events is going to come in the sprint race.
Now, what's been happening, this was the race that we've been enjoying between Malaysia and Canada and Italy. You can see the cars over the bumps, a little bit of a brake lock-up from Sean McIntosh for Canada, but I don't think that it's actually affected his opportunities too much. He's still in behind the Malaysian entry. France continue to lead by just over 2 seconds from Switzerland, Brazil. And then there's a car that's confusing us, or if you're not careful it might do. It's China, but they're not China,
yes. They've been in the pits, in the garage, and in fact have gone back out again. They're still being listed as 18th, so that's advantageous to them to be running, even though they're not going to be in the money, as they might say. It certainly is about grid position for the feature race.
Italy in blue, chased by Mexico, then Ireland, and then Japan and the Czech Republic. And Thomas Enge with a lot of fans here today, wandering around in the paddock area, enjoying the access that they have been able to get here, right up close to the teams, to the drivers. And that's certainly a major part of this championship. A lot of the fans down in that paddock area during the lunchtime period, but now watching their man and seeing if he can move up any further. He's got up to 12th place as Thomas Enge for the Czech Republic. but he's been a little stuck in recent laps behind the Japanese entry being driven by Hideki Noda.
Of course, one of the problems is you can catch somebody in relative terms easily, but when you get then behind them, you lose your momentum if you haven't got the opportunity to take the run and time it just precisely. As we look at Malaysia, Canada and Italy, and they've been running like this for the last number of laps, and so far none of these two who are chasing down Malaysia have been in a position to really threaten that 6th place.
Brazil's just used its power boost as well, but again, I think it's more about getting fastest lap or holding fastest lap, which they have already got at this stage. And France there with this very useful advantage. They're in no trouble. They're on to the final lap, and it does look as though Nicolas Lapierre is going to be able to take the first win for France in A1 Grand Prix, and Nelson Piquet's record of being unbeaten in the races so far is about to come to an end. 2 victories at Brands Hatch, but he hasn't been able to find a way past the Swiss entry in this one.
No, he hasn't, but of course by finishing third he's able to consolidate his current lead, because now then Nicolas Lapierre, well of course if we're talking about nations not drivers, but Brazil have consolidated their lead. France will pick up maximum points in this first of the sprint races, and for Neil Yarni and Team Switzerland, a very, very welcome 2nd place.
So the win of the sprint race here at the Euro Speedway goes to France. It's their first win in the World Cup of Motorsport, and it's Nicolas Lapierre at the wheel. 2nd place goes to Switzerland, 3rd to Brazil, and I think 4th place will be held by New Zealand, who managed to hold off the host nation Germany throughout the entire race distance. The lapped car of China coming through, and then we'll wait to see, has Malaysia been able to hold on to 6th? That's a good result for Malaysia, having started way down in 18th place on the grid. Malaysia finishes in 6th, Canada 7th, Italy in 8th position, Mexico 9th, and the final point goes to Ireland. Ralph Furman recovering well after being squeezed out on the grass on the first corner.
Well, a total masterclass from Nicolas Lapierre and Team France. They really had control from the beginning, and in spite of that very, very tight situation in turn 1 where Scott Speed, Team USA, and Robbie Kerr, Team GBR collided, Nicolas Lapierre and Team France kept out of trouble and controlled this race from the front, never under pressure either from Switzerland or Brazil. Finished just over 2 seconds ahead of Team Switzerland and a further half a second ahead of Team Brazil. So delight again in Team France, and Team Principal Jean-Paul Grillo, no doubt, delighted as well.
Yeah, well, Robbie Kerr making his way back to his stricken car, and of course because they weren't able to get it to the pits, the team is going to have a very limited time, John, to get that car repaired for the feature.
Yes, the damage looks to be the front suspension, whether it's a wishbone and steering arm or anything more than that, but certainly that car will have to be taken back, as we saw with Jos Verstappen. He got his car back and gave the team the upper. There's the wishbone, the back leg of the upper wishbone. That's the damage that was done when the collision occurred. And Robbie looking at it and probably ruefully thinking, well, you know, I was trying my best.
He was trying his best. He went for the move. It didn't come off. And unfortunately, both he and the Team USA car out on the spot, and it affected a number of other entries as well. But no problems at all for the car that was just ahead of them, turning into that first corner. France from pole position, taking the victory here at the Euro Speedway. A beautifully driven race by Nicolas Lapierre, and that was the moment that he crossed the line. And Brazil kept the pressure on Switzerland throughout, but they couldn't quite make it into second. Delight for Lapierre, and the man who's been racing in GP2 this year but hasn't really had the kind of results that he would have liked, has come good here. There's no doubt about it in A1 Grand Prix. And for France, it will move them right onto the tail, really, of Brazil in terms of the points, although Brazil, taking another podium spot, will maintain the outright advantage. Good result for Switzerland, though. Their best results of this short season that we've had so far. And for Neil Yarni, I think he'll be fairly satisfied with that.
Yes, that's a strong result. I mean, certainly Neil Yarni, one of a number of young drivers who were very much as the fancied form coming into round 1 at Brands Hatch. It didn't happen there, but that was a more typical of what we expect from Neil Yarni, and I think he will go away now and well, they're celebrating with his team members. That's the kind of result that they've been looking for. Max Velti is the team principal, and he's been saying that the speed's there, we've just got to get the focus, and well, I think that's a pretty good effort and plenty of focus from the young Swiss driver.
But there's Nicolas Lapierre receiving the congratulations of his team. Team France have done it. They've won here the first race of the day at the Euro Speedway. The second race will involve pit stops, a little more uncertainty, but from his point of view, Lapierre could not have driven a cleaner, more decisive and smoother race than that. It was perfect.
Well, the drivers are being weighed, and that weight will then be calculated to ensure that nobody was running underweight. And of course it's very critical that you get your fuel volume correct, because if it's incorrect and therefore your ballast is wrong. So Nelson Piquet Jr. walks away, helmet still on. I think he's disappointed. He felt that maybe he could have had that second place. He pushed very hard in the closing couple of laps and did close up to the rear of Team Switzerland and Neil Yarni, but wasn't quite sufficient.
Not quite enough, but in terms of the points, it's still very useful for Brazil. They continue to lead in the standings, and that's really the most significant thing from their point of view. And of course, it gives him a spot starting third on the grid for the feature race later on, and that is equally important because it keeps the possibility of scoring consistently very alive. A little conversation going on between Neil Yarni and Nicolas Lapierre as they head up towards the podium area. But this is the result then. Let's just run through it. France ahead of Switzerland and Brazil. Fourth place for New Zealand, which is a great effort considering they hadn't qualified too well. Fifth for Germany. Sixth for Malaysia. That was a strong drive from Alex Young. He fended off Canada, Italy, Mexico, and Ireland recovered to 10th place courtesy of the efforts of Ralph Furman after he was squeezed out onto the grass on the opening lap of this race. 11th place went to Japan, and for Hideki Noda, his first appearance in A1 Grand Prix in the race situation. Enger fought his way back up to 12th for the Czech Republic ahead of South Africa, Austria and Indonesia, Ananda Mikula. Christian Jones for Australia, 16th, 17th Karan Chandhok for India, and then China, Lebanon, and then the cars that didn't finish the race. Portugal, Pakistan, the Netherlands, USA, and of course Great Britain as a result of that incident at the first corner.